This is Design Safe Radio, where natural hazards researchers strive to make our society more resilient to everything nature throws at us.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Safe Radio. I'm your host, Dan Zahner, happy to be with you once again, and today we have joining us from the balmy University of Florida, Jeremy Waisome. Great to meet you. Welcome.
Thanks. It's nice to be here.
So before we get into our topics for today, can you give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you're from, what's your specialty, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, Jeremy Waisome. I did all of my degrees at the University of Florida in civil engineering, and actually my research has nothing to do with what I'm actually working on now with the NHERI project, but I did asphalt research as a PhD student.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how I ended up with the asphalt space, but eventually kind of realized it wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I did a little...
You wanted to go on a road less traveled, so to speak? There we go. There it is.
I did. There it is. I ended up doing a postdoc in computer science, actually.
Wow.
And I know. I'm a strange bird, so we'll get there eventually, how I got into this work. But yeah, I was there and doing work on what's referred to by the National Science Foundation as broadening participation in computing. And I managed a multi-institutional alliance grant that focused on that. So it kind of opened my eyes to the field of engineering and computer science education as a career path. And I just started learning more about that. I did another shorter postdoc in engineering education and said, this is it. This is where I want to be. And so I actually took an instructional position with the hopes that one day I would be able to be an assistant professor, and here I am. So
cool.
Somehow navigated all of that. And because of my relationship with some of the faculty in civil engineering, I was invited to work on our renewal for our NHERI grant. And they wanted to expand the education and outreach portion of their proposal, and I was invited to work on that.
That's awesome. And that facility and that whole team down there is just so cool and really, really fun to work with. Can you kind of give us a picture of what engineering education as a field is like, and how does that relate to natural hazards, to wind engineering? Like, what are some of the challenges there? Who are some of the students that you're designing your instructional pieces towards? Can you tell us about some of that?
Yeah, so engineering education, broadly speaking, is centered around like the effective instruction and practice of engineering. So how do we train and equip the next generation of engineers, and how do we support the people who are already professionals in this space? And in general, engineering impacts everything that we do, right? You know, if you look around where you are, there's engineering. It's a ubiquitous thing. And so we work towards solutions that will improve how we educate engineers through innovative techniques, through transformative ideas, whether that be inside or outside of the classroom. So this includes research, right? And when I think about like what NHERI does and the infrastructure that NHERI has in terms of introducing, scientists to technologies that they otherwise wouldn't have access to, there is a huge opportunity to introduce people who don't really have the technical savvy that an engineer might to what's actually going on, what's being designed around them, like why are roofs built the way that they're built? Why are walls the way that they're structured? And I think having a better understanding of the built environment is really valuable for kids, for parents. For anyone. And if you think about like the state of Florida in particular, we're very susceptible to wind hazards. Most people are aware that hurricanes are a thing here.
Yes.
And it actually scares people from moving to our state because they're afraid of like the idea of a giant storm like a hurricane. And I think through education, it'll help people understand like we're not just putting you in a house or building a structure that's going to be susceptible to this type of hazard. Like we're actually thinking in great detail how to improve structural design from any aspect of your home, like the windows, the doors, the roof, the materials that are used. So all of that, I think, is really great to like kind of segue students into the space of engineering because they're tangible things they can see and understand.
Yeah, I think this is really important, especially in engineering education. Like my background's mechanical engineering, and one of the things that I constantly got feedback on when I got out into industry was, you don't actually know anything about real things, do you? Like, you know all this theory, you know how to do calculations, but you don't know how to weld a pipe together. You've never done, so it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is like, here is how to make it real. Like when you
Yeah,
go to buy a house in Florida, here's the things that you need to consider
right.
from an engineering perspective and have been considered from an engineering perspective.
Yeah.
Is there anything like on the non-technical side of things that you're working with students that are, like, again, referring just my own anecdotal experience, we focused a whole lot on the theoretical technical things, but not so
Mhm.
much the how do you actually work with other engineers? How do you work
Yeah.
within a organization? Do you guys touch on that as well?
A little bit. So, for me personally, as a Black female, like I get to be a role model for
Yeah.
people who don't really think of me when they think of what an engineer is, right? And I think that in and of itself is a really valuable learning experience for students. Our lead investigator, Jennifer Bridge, also a
Amazing.
woman. Yeah. And for me, like being able to see her and her role as a student was really exciting because as a graduate student, she's living a life and pursuing her career goals. She has a young child, and I had a young child, and I was like, this is really cool to see her leading
Yeah.
such a large effort. So I appreciate having her as an example, and I think bringing them into the classroom and showing people like this is our team, this is the diversity of our group, and look at the students who are involved in the project, like even that piece of role modeling is really valuable. And we're really intentional about from the undergraduate students all the way to the staff in the building, like thinking about who's involved in the project and what they represent.
Hmm.
So that's one thing that we do talk about with the students for sure.
That's really great. Yeah, exploring kind of our own biases as well. It sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how that affects the way we work together or don't.
Yeah. And I do think like there's room for that. So, in our structure for our program that we designed, we do talk about teamwork and the importance of like diverse teams and all of that. So that
That's
is a
awesome.
piece of what we do.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Design Safe Radio. This show is sponsored by the National Science Foundation, grant number 2129782. You can subscribe to Design Safe Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please leave us a review so that we can improve the show and also help others find our episodes in iTunes. Thanks for your feedback and support. We really appreciate it. You can find out more about NHERI at designsafe-ci.org, on Facebook at Design Safe Radio, or on Twitter at NHERI Design Safe.